one didn't gain another yard. You blitz all night! If they cross the line of scrimmage, I'm going to take every last one of you out.
The New Hampshire High School Football Show is brought to you by the New Hampshire State Liquor Commission's Division of Enforcement.
You got heart, charisma, and a lot of skill.
And now, here are your hosts, Pete Terrier and Dave Haley from NHSportsPage.com.
Clear eyes, full hearts.
Let's go play some football.
Oh, it's got that November feel. Even though it's still October, good morning and welcome to the penultimate regular season week of the New Hampshire High School Football Show. We do it each and every Saturday morning at this time, 8 to 9 a.m., two fine stations here in New Hampshire, News Radio 610 and 96.7. My name is Pete Terrier, alongside Dave Haley from NHSportsPage.com. And Dave, you know it's almost the postseason when you get in here in the morning and you're scurrying to find out who's in, who's out, who did what last night, who kind of did the unthinkable and pulled off maybe a miracle appearance in the playoff when you thought it wasn't going to happen just a short time ago. First of all, good morning to you, and I love this kind of season, don't you?
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, we've been I think the show snuck up on us because we're trying to figure out who's in, who's out, what happened last night. But a lot of things fell into place last night. We're going to get through all of it.
A lot of games too. 20 games played last night. Playing some Friday Night Lights type of football in places that don't normally see it. A game that I went to last night, a Division III matchup between Pelham and Campbell under the lights in Litchfield. Very exciting atmosphere there. We'll talk about that. We have the head coach of the Pelham Pythons joining us a little bit later on in the show. Ryan Clark will be coming on to talk about it. But why don't we run down all the scores from last night? As I said, 20 games. This may be the most games that have ever been played on Friday night, at least this year anyway.
Yeah. Start with what I think was probably the biggest upset, one of the biggest upsets of the season. Nashua North, Noah Goslin scored a touchdown. I got into the end zone with 8 minutes left, and they held off BG. This is a loss, so Nashua North with a 14-7 win over BG, and we think this may have knocked Bishop Girton, who still has a game against Timberlane left, but this may have knocked them out of the playoffs, which is pretty big news. We'll go through that. Biggest game of the night, Keene takes care of business, 42-28 over Nashua South. Nashua South had turnovers on their first two possessions, scrambled to get back in this thing. It was a very good football game, but a kid we mentioned a lot, but not enough. Alex Parento is one of the best players of the state. There's no question about it.
Certainly is.
Yeah, absolutely. So Keene with a big win. There had been talk that they were going to be the best team left out, and they, to their credit, made sure that that's likely not going to happen. We're going to go through all that.
When you weren't not here a couple of weeks ago, you're up on your Deliverance weekend in Pittsburgh. Roger Brown was sitting in that chair that you're in right now. Roger, of course, from NHFootballReport.com and the Union Leader. And he was just pretty much incensed by the fact that Keene was probably going to be on the outside looking in as one of the top teams in the state, probably a team that's top 6, maybe top 5.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to be in the playoffs because BG and Nashua South had better record than them. They lost a head game against BG, and look what happens 2 weeks later. It changes.
Yeah,
it changes.
John Lupa, the head coach at Keene, tweeted out a couple weeks ago. I can't remember the exact tweet, but basically something like, "You need to change this because this is wrong."
He's on Twitter.
Yeah,
Coach Lupa's. I gotta get him.
He's on Twitter, all right.
I follow his son Lucas.
Yeah,
I gotta start following John Lupa.
He's not afraid to get after it either. But we'll get into all this. Londonderry is a playoff team, and they beat Manchester Memorial 34-32. Londonderry, Dennis Bishop and that crew can score points. They do it again. They hold off a good Memorial offense and get the win there. Spalding, the Red Raiders, the Fighting McIsaacs, 42-13. They beat Alvern, and this is a team playing very, very good football right now. And I think that this is a program now that isn't just happy to get in. I mean, I feel like this is a program that they lost that epic playoff game they still talk about against Dover a couple years ago and in the semifinals when it was Division II. And I feel like this is a program that really feels like they should get a little further this year, and they get a nice win there. Concord And what has to be one of the kindest scores of the night, 48-6 over West.
They only played the first quarter, the starters.
It could have been a lot more than that. So Eric Brown getting everyone in, I'm sure, last night. 48-6, Manchester West. Concord is your lone undefeated team in Division I football, so congratulations. Bedford 55-7 over Merrimack. I'm surprised Merrimack couldn't score a little more with Devin Gillis, and they've got some good playmakers there, but Bedford's good, and they roll 55-7. We'll talk more about them. Exeter rolled over Timberlane 41-14, and doesn't that Exeter win a Keene look a lot more impressive today? Than remember, that was what, week
Everybody
2?
is down on Exeter big time. And
Don't be.
I think Bill Ball and the rest of that Exeter coaching staff and the team themselves are probably sitting there going, okay, you just keep talking smack about us.
I wrote about that, yeah.
We've been exposed. You can pass against us.
Some pretty smart people.
Well, I look, they do have a weakness defending the pass, and it's probably smart to do that, just like it was smart for Portsmouth last week to pass against Plymouth instead of just trying to run at them.
Yep.
And it worked.
Yep.
But that being said, both of those teams are very, very dangerous in the playoffs. Trust me.
Yep. And speaking of that, Zach Adler is a very good linebacker for Exeter, picked off a pass and ran in for a touchdown against Timberlane. So they get a 41-14 win. Winnicott rolls on. It looks like Winnicott's going to be the odd team out. And listen, they lost to Spalding and they lost to Exeter, so it is what it is. But 31-14 over Dover. Winnicott gets a win in the Seacoast rivalry there. Do you have a final score on Central Salem? I don't have it in front of me.
Central won the game.
We can look. You don't have to scramble. I got more scores, but I just don't have that final score. I'll move on to other games, though. Plymouth bounces back 42-14 over Hanover. Epping Newmarket gets a really nice win. Jacob Valinsky is one of the better players in Division III football, and they win. They beat Bishop Brady and Matt Tidu 33-21, Epping Newmarket with a win over Bishop Brady. Hollis Brookline has had a tough year, but they roll over Conval, who's had a real tough year. 39-0 Hollis Brookline with the win there. Game that you were at last night, Pelham all over Campbell, 48-13.
They're good.
I want to talk about that game. Yeah, absolutely. That was the best defense against the best offense.
And Chris Medeiros is one of the top running backs in the state.
He's for real.
He's good.
Yeah, he's legit.
Yeah, and so is their quarterback, Joe Slatter.
Yeah. NHIAA doesn't have the final score here, but I know that Monadnock, I'll get you the final score, but Monadnock rolled over Kearsarge. They are the lone undefeated team in Division II football. Monadnock gets a win there, and Dylan Lane went over 1,000 yards rushing in that game. Another thing, Coach
Did you have the score of that game?
I don't have the score yet. I don't have it on NHIAA. I just know from Twitter last night, I know they rolled to a win. Coach Patnode and I spoke this week, and we're going to get all the stats for the Monadnock kids this week to get them up to speed with the statewide leaders, division leaders. This is a game I picked wrong. Very, very, very wrong. Milford 38-7 over Souhegan.
You picked Souhegan?
I did. I don't know why, and I didn't feel great about it. Now I really, really don't feel good about it. But Milford with a nice win there. Keith Jones does such a good job. And Coach Patnode actually couldn't say enough things about how his team was treated going to Milford and how much respect he has for Keith Jones. So they get a nice win there. They beat Souhegan for only the second time, I think, in the last 10 years. So they get the win there. Pinkerton rolled 56-21 over Goffstown. Goffstown's one of those teams that can score, but they can't stop anybody.
I think that was a 6-point game at halftime.
Yeah, and Pinkerton rolled in the second half, yeah. Bo, this is a terrific game in that subdivision of Division III that gets so much attention. Bo, 33, Summersworth 27. So great win there for those guys. Matt Edinburgh's really been playing well. Derek Polish and those kids get a big win. Bo, 33-27. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And then Farmington Newt 31-27 over Raymond. I don't have much to add on that one. And the last score is a big one. Kennett 38-14 over Laconia. Kennett is your second playoff team. They will face off against arch rival Plymouth in 2 weeks at the land of Lenahan, as Pete Terrier likes to say, in round one. That was for the playoff spot right there, and Kennett gets it. Will Pollard going into that one, I talked to Coach Holdeman last week, was 50-50. He's their very talented quarterback for Kennedy. He was 50-50 to play in that game with an injury. and they ended up getting the win. Chris Graziano, another very good player for them, but Nick Graziano, excuse me. And so Kennett's going to the playoffs, which is nice.
Just a couple of notes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned it because I was looking for some scores that you did not have, but that Bo Somersworth game was an overtime game according to the Union leader, and also that Central game, they beat Salem 42-30. Although I did hear, I think someplace else, that it was 42-20 Central, but nevertheless, Central wins the game. The Monadnock score 42-14 over Kearsarge.
What about Lebanon and John Stark?
And the Lebanon John Stark game, they do not have a final score, but I heard on a different radio show this morning that Lebanon won that game.
Yep.
Big one today on the Seacoast, Merrimack Valley at St. Thomas, Division II East matchup. I think that's a winner is in.
It is.
And plays Portsmouth in the playoffs.
It is.
There's still football to be played next weekend, but for all intents and purposes, that winner of that game between Merrimack Valley and St. Thomas gets in. Another huge Division II game today, Trinity at Wyndham.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a game that Trinity,
Carmen is back.
He is back. He's been out for a couple of weeks, had a little bit of an injury that he sustained against the Plymouth game. It was a minor injury from what I'm told, but they figured it would be best to keep him out just to be safe, err on the side of caution, so to speak. And he's going to be back today. That's going to be a great football game, 1:30 kickoff over in Wyndham at the beautiful new high school with a football field that I was reading that they're going to get a turf field, or they're angling to get a turf field. I think they need it over there. I mean, it's a nice atmosphere, but when you drive onto that campus and you see how nice that high school is, and then you get to the football field.
I haven't been there yet.
It's very, very strange. It's similar to what I saw last night at Campbell. As nice as that school is.
That's nice. Campbell's real nice. Yeah, I've been there.
Well, I'm talking about Wyndham.
Yeah,
I mean, it's beautiful.
Campbell's nice too.
And I haven't been inside Campbell, but they need they really need that multi-purpose turf field over there at Wyndham. You got Portsmouth at Pembroke, Kingswood at Sanborn, D3 Mascoma at Newfound. Your Guilford.
Excuse me. My playoff bound.
Thank you. Guilford Golden Eagles playing at Franklin.
Thank you.
Interlakes Moultonboro, they're playing at Winnisquam today, and then Stevens at Newport. That's a big one as well.
That's a really good game. I picked Newport in that one. That's going to be a great football game.
I picked Newport too. But then I read your Thursday Thoughts column on nhsportspage.com, and I almost wish I picked Stevens in that game.
Yeah, I know.
One other note about that Merrimack Valley St. Thomas game. Jake Geppert, I think, suffered a concussion. I don't know if he's going to play in that game.
I think they think he's coming back.
I thought I read, I'm guessing Roger Brown, but I thought I read that he wasn't going to play that game. And that's huge if he can't play for St. Thomas in that game because, like we said, this one means
huge.
The playoffs.
Yeah, I thought that I talked to Justin McIsaac. I thought he was coming back, but maybe I'm incorrect on that. But yeah, he missed last game. I thought that they thought he was going to come back. In that kind of game, Tucker Burt was on the very good running back from Merrimack Valley, called it the biggest game in Merrimack Valley history.
It is.
Today. So it's a huge game for those guys.
It's interesting how these biggest games change week to week because a couple weeks ago when they played Portsmouth, that was the biggest game in Pride history. But now, hey, you got to take it game by game, and every game is your biggest game, I guess, from here on out. When you haven't been, when you're in uncharted waters like Merrimack Valley is right now as far as playoff situation, it is your biggest game each and every week.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a timeout, come back. We'll try and look at some of those key games from last night, most notably that Nashua South game against Keene. Nashua North, Jason Roby. All right, that's a rivalry situation, obviously, in the Gate City. We had that big BG Nashua South game last week. We were talking about that first time that they've played in 10 years. Well, there's also somewhat of a rivalry between Nashua North and Bishop Garden. All these Nashua schools, you see it a lot in basketball and hockey and the other sports. But in football, it hasn't really happened yet until this year with the new alignment. And Nashua North comes up big, and John Lupa is sending a basket of fruit, maybe one of those edible arrangements baskets or something, over to Jason Roby at Nashua North High School and saying, Thanks, Coach. We appreciate it. We needed that. We'll help you someplace down the line if we can. Quick timeout. More of the New Hampshire High School football show coming up. Don't forget Ryan Clark, the head coach of the Pelham Pythons, the unbeaten Pelham Pythons, knocking off Campbell last night in a big way, spoiling their homecoming event last night in Litchfield. It is the New Hampshire High School football show. News Radio 610 and 96.7.
Welcome back to the best local coverage of New Hampshire high school football on the New Hampshire High School Football Show on News Radio 610 and 96.7.
A lot of people talking around the state about the turn of events that really came out of a couple of big cities here in New Hampshire. We're talking to the west in Keene, where Nashua South and Keene, and that was a back-and-forth game. Keene jumped up on top early, 14-0. South stormed back, and then it was like trading blows for a while, and then Keene kind of won the latter part of that game, ended up knocking off Nashua South, ending their unbeaten bid for a perfect season, and 42-28 was the final. And then, meanwhile, back in Nashua, you head back east across 101, and you get Nashua North upsetting Bishop Girton in that game and opening the door for Keene to make the playoffs when it really looked bleak for them, and it looked like the NHIAA really had a problem on their hands with everybody clamoring for a change in the system, just after not even 1 year played in this new system. And what do you know, the NHIAA, Pat Corbin's probably chuckling somewhere in that football committee going, hey, we knew we had this thing right. It's going to work out, it looks like, because Keene is most likely going to get in. On BG, unfortunately for them, they're most likely going to be out of the playoffs. And that's hard to believe.
Now, Keene hosts Alvern next week, so you would imagine they're not going to have any problems winning at home next week. Tom King has the article today from last night's game, again, which Nashua North beat BG. The quote he has from Travis Cody, who we both know and like a lot. Travis Cody's quote was, "It's very disappointing to be in the situation we're in right now after we had such a great season up to this point." So he gets it, and in this day, and you and I have a lot of experience of talking to coaches after games and then saying, hey, by the way, Spalding beat South or this beat that. These guys know right away. I'm certain that when he said that quote, the game, I'm sure losing hurt enough, but I'm certain that he knew that South had lost to Keene, and then that was going to get Keene in.
Yeah, and they, in this Twitter world that we're in now, where you get up to the minute gratification, up to the minute information, I'm sure they had people on the sideline saying, what's going on out there in Keene? Or, really more likely what's going on in Nashua.
I'm sure that he wasn't thinking about it during the game, but yeah, I'm sure right afterwards. Again, we've sat there, look, You're
telling me that you don't think that people were going up to Lupa during the game?
Oh, I thought we were talking about Travis Cody.
Well, maybe Travis Cody too, but especially John Lupa, because that was the team with more to gain. BG was the team with something to lose.
I don't think John Lupa. I think you have to take care of business and beat South. And no, I don't think that John Lupa wanted to know the score.
I'm not saying that he was asking, "Hey guys, keep me updated on what's going on."
He doesn't look like the
Nashua.
kind of guy I'd go up to and say that. He looked like he'd bite my head off.
But I could see a situation where some people around that Keene program were trying to keep the players. Maybe he didn't want anything to do with that. Maybe he just said, "Look, we got to win this game.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
If we don't win this
you don't
game,
beat South, it doesn't
nothing
matter.
else matters."
Yeah.
But you know how it is. People with information want to share that information. So I can see people going, "Hey, did you hear? Nashua North got BG on the ropes."
It's like
at
when
Stowell
you
Stadium.
It's like when
I could see that happening.
When you go out in the morning and you got like a big interview or something like that, and you step on a rake and it slams you in the face. That's what happens when BG loses in the North, and then Travis Cody then walked 2 feet and the sprinklers turned on and he got him drenched. That's what happened when he found out that Keene beat South. So that was a double whammy, and now BG is now sitting there this morning going, "Oh, are you serious? We may not go to the playoffs?"
How did that happen?
How did this happen? Like Tom Hurley and C.J. Boykin. And again, the story of this game at the end there is that Hurley hit C.J. Boykin with a 32-yard pass. They got down to the Nashua North 14 with 1:25 to play, but they got 2 costly penalties after that. and the drive died at the 12 with a 4th and 8 incompletion. This is Tom King's article out of the Telegraph. But yeah, you're sitting there this morning. It's just like it's sort of like a playoff loss where, I've seen kids on Twitter the day after an upset playoff loss go, "Are you serious? We don't have practice today?" And again, their season's not over, but I mean, they're the odd team out. And honestly, they don't have any. Keene had something to complain about. They don't, as Roger said, they don't have anything to complain about. You have to take care of business. You got to beat Nashville North. You got to beat them.
I know. And
I feel bad for him, but I mean, this is the way it goes.
Well, imagine if
same thing with Winnicott.
Yeah, I mean that's another story. I mean, look at the Spalding, Exeter, Winnicott right now all tied. Now that might be a moot point next week if Winnicott loses to Nashua South, but I think Winnicott very well could beat Nashua South. Does Nashua South kind of take their foot off the gas pedal a little bit, knowing that they're in, knowing that no matter what they do against Winnicott in the regular season finale next week, it does not matter. They're still going to be there. Although, think about this for a second. If Nashua South were to lose to Winnicott, Keene wins against Alvern, they'd have to go back to Keene for that conference championship game. So you got to think it's going to be,
they have something to play for.
They got something to play for
and I
next
think
week.
You just figured it out by saying that. But, looking down Division I only, and again, there's 3 divisions in play here. But Winnicott, that's a pretty good football team. Manchester Central, that's the team that's really improved and jumped on the back of Josiah Wade. They're playing well. They're playing much better.
We haven't even talked about this yet, though.
Bishop Girton, good football team. All 3 of those teams look like they're not getting in. Now, Central, of course, they got a game against Bedford, so they control their own destiny.
And if Central
but I'm
wins
just saying,
that game
there's going to be
week,
3 good teams that aren't going to get in.
Yeah, and one of them could be Bedford.
Yeah.
If Central beats, and I don't see that happening, by the way.
Yeah.
Even though Central's playing a lot better right now.
I don't either.
I don't see them beating Bedford, especially in Bedford.
No.
On their senior night, so to speak. But if Central was somehow able to beat Bedford, Bedford would be out.
Yep.
And that's almost unfathomable.
It's a playoff game. It's a playoff game. I mean, and hey, look at Central. Central has won 6 games in a row. They've come back. They were 0-2. They lost. They got blown out on that opening night. I think you were there, right?
Yeah,
when they
Concord.
Concord just wiped the floor with them and shut the lights off. And then, they hung in there with Pinkerton in week 2, but then lost 37-20. And then since then, now they haven't beaten a murderer's row. They've beaten Memorial, Goffstown, Merrimack, West, Londonderry, and they beat Salem.
They beat who they should have beat.
Hey, all you can do is put the schedule out there. But and that's why I don't want to hear it when Notre Dame beats Air Force today. You can only play who the schedule tells you to play. But anyway, so listen, Josiah Wade wasn't doing much the first 2 weeks. He's Josiah Wade again. You know what I mean?
I think that Ryan Ray,
kid like that, can
trusted him.
Yeah, that's a 2-minute offense by yourself. Yeah.
Look, all right, I'll tell you this. At the beginning of the season, Ryan Ray and that central coaching staff knew that they had a kid who was dominant, with Campbell last year in the lower divisions. Really dominant. But they were still trying to figure out how that would translate to Division I and that competition you see every single week. So they weren't exactly utilizing him like they're utilizing him now. He earned the reps. He earned the touches, so to speak. And now he's getting it. Now he is their offense. Bedford, I think, is going to be able to, if not stop that, somewhat contain that. And that's why I think Bedford wins that game next week. The other thing that we haven't really talked about as much in the Division II and Division III situations, just because so many of those games are taking place today. All the D1 action, I think, took place yesterday.
Yep.
So we have a much clearer look at what that playoff picture is like. In Division II and Division III, it's still very much up in the air. We will talk about a Division III game next and Division III in general because we have the head coach of the Pelham Pythons coming on, Ryan Clark, with us just after this break, but go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's some disagreement even amongst coaches, and I've talked to Brian Pafford, and I've talked to Steve Burns, and I've talked to
Well, no, you said you talked to Linwood Patnode.
Linwood Patnode.
From Monadnock.
Yeah, Chuck Linehan doesn't want to sit here and talk playoff seedings with me. But who's between Monadnock, assuming Trinity wins? Well, it's not assumed Trinity's going to beat Wyndham, but for now, they're the higher seed. Monadnock's undefeated. Trinity is 6-1. Plymouth is 7-1 with the win last night. Portsmouth is 6-1. And so there's a lot of disagreement. Some people think Portsmouth's number 1. Some people think Monadnock's number one because it goes by strength of schedule, and Plymouth has the easiest schedule, I think, of that group.
They do.
So
They do.
that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. We're a ways away from that, but what we do know very clearly is that Kennett is your playoff team in that division. They're going to play Plymouth in the playoffs, and St. Thomas Merrimack Valley winner today wins, and then it looks like it's going to be Wyndham and Trinity facing off again in 2 weeks. The winner today gets home field, and Sanborn will be traveling to Monadnock in the first round of the playoffs for that one.
I want to just make a correction there. I think we both said that Plymouth had the easiest schedule out of all those top teams. Indeed,
I think it's rated that way.
Well, I think that Monadnock had the easiest schedule because Plymouth, don't forget, played Wyndham. They played Trinity. They played.
Oh,
Portsmouth.
I know. I was told
and
that.
They played Merrimack Valley too, I think. So Plymouth's schedule was not easy. Maybe their conference was easy, but I think Monadnock has the weakest conference out of everybody. We'll take a break, come back. We'll get the Pelham coach Ryan Clark on next, talk about that big win at Campbell last night under the lights. It's the New Hampshire High School Football Show. News Radio 610 and 96.7.
On News Radio 610 and 96.7.
Well, Dave Haley from NHSportsPage.com for the last several years has been beating on me about small school sports, especially basketball and football, calling me a Division I, Division II snob, which I admittedly have been and been spending a lot of time focusing on that. But, Dave, you have wore me down.
We're working on it.
You got me to some D3, D4 basketball last year. I enjoyed it. Last night I made my first foray into Division III football out in Litchfield at Campbell High School for the big one in D3 between Pelham and Campbell. Pelham Pythons, very, very impressive. One of 3 unbeaten teams left in the state of New Hampshire. They win 48-13 against Campbell last night, and they secure themselves home field for the D3 playoffs. That conference championship game will take place at Pelham High School in a couple of weeks. Here to talk about it with us, the head coach of Pelham, Ryan Clark. Coach Clark, good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So my first look, as I said, at your team, I have seen Pelham football before when you guys were really a power in your division, regardless of where it was. Coach Tom Babain had a great program. I remember kids like Bruce Vieira and some championship seasons. You guys have been down for the last couple of years, moving from division to division, but you've settled in quite nicely this year. Some of the players that I saw last night, Chris Medeiros, I heard a lot about him. What an outstanding running back. You guys just really were impressive to me last night, I really felt.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of really good athletes, and Chris, it starts with Chris, but then it goes right down the line to Joe Slattery, Zach Conway, and our offensive line also has stepped up huge for us this year. So the kids are working really hard, do everything I ask, and we do. When I talk to other coaches, they talk about all the weapons we have, and it's absolutely right.
Coach, I made a kind of a joke in my column this week that Manchester West gave up more points at halftime last week than you guys had coming in the entire season. But a lot of times, you know, the running backs, the quarterbacks, and this is just the nature of high school football, those are the guys that really get all the, you know, they get their names mentioned every week and so forth. Who are the guys who are doing the grunt work defensively? Who are those guys who, you have such a terrific defense, who are the guys that make up that defense?
Well, it starts with Tyler Kozik, who I can't even tell you what position he plays because he moves around every single week. And it's incredible that he's able to do that and that he's willing to do that. Depending on who we're playing, who's hurt, who's in there, who's not, he will go to D-line, he'll go to linebacker, D-end, whatever I ask him to do. And then in the game, I'll have to change it up. But wherever he is, they got to account for him because he is just an animal out there. Also, I think our cornerbacks are very underrated, especially considering like the team we just played. You know, the reason that we were able to hold such an incredibly effective offense to only 13 points is because of Bryce Brown, who is a junior, playing his butt off for us, doing a great job. Chris Benjamin back there, and they just every single week they study their film, they work hard in practice, learn the scheme, and then they just absolutely come ready to play.
You mentioned Bryce Brown, and that kid is a hitter. I was on the sidelines over on the Campbell side during the game last night, and he came up and made a crushing hit on Cody Alward. Kind of knocked him a little bit off his game for a little bit. I was impressed. And you mentioned Conway, the kid who had the big pick six. Campbell was driving. Christian McKenna, very, very good quarterback for the Cougars, looked like he was going to get his team back into the game late in that first half. And then Conway, who had just caught a touchdown pass from your quarterback Slattery on the other end, he ended up stepping in front of one at about the 5-yard line, right when they were knocking on the door to score, and took it back the other way. He made a very impressive play. And then there was a play on a punt, and I think you remember this. Campbell punted it away, and it looked like they were just going to down it themselves. And all of a sudden, here comes Chris Medeiros, flies in there, snags it, and starts returning it. It was like a play that I've never seen before. I mean, they always just, everybody's like, get away, don't touch it. You don't want to like fumble it or not field it cleanly. He just went in there, plucked it out of the air off a bounce, and started running it back. That was very, very sneaky. Was that by design, or is that just instincts by him?
Well, the way we coach it is we coach to play aggressively and not be scared. That doesn't mean be stupid and do dumb things. And obviously, if it doesn't work, then everyone's like, oh, that was a crazy thing to do. Why would they do that? But we have such great athletes, great kids, very smart football players who know when you can take a risk like that. I was watching film last night, seeing the same thing, and I think he knew that, like he might get whacked taking it, but I knew that he wasn't going to fumble or do anything crazy with it. But we coach that. We coach scoop and score. We coach be aggressive. Because, like I said, you can't play scared.
Joe Slattery will always have a special place in my heart because I think this is the kid, but that applied to. But Coach Regan and I, the basketball coach Pelham, and I have become friends over the years. Terrific coach for the basketball team for Pelham,
and he helped us get you, by the way, Coach. So we thank Coach Regan for that too.
Yeah. So he told me last season, I think it was Joe Slattery, that Joe Slattery wasn't on our website in the box scores, and that he went to Coach Regan and said, can you tell Dave Haley to get me on the team? And he said, I guess Regan said to him, you haven't done enough yet. You haven't earned it. Slattery went out and took some charges in the next games and stuff like that, and boom, he was on the website. And of course, I would have put him on no matter what, but right. I always give that kid credit. But I've been writing for the last few weeks about how good this South Division is. I know I don't have to tell you this, but with yourself, you beat Bo 7-0 in that first game of the year, and that looks like it could be a playoff preview. But you've got yourself and Bo, Campbell, Somersworth, who has to be the best last-place team in the entire state of New Hampshire. But have you gotten, because you've moved around divisions, are you able to go out and see a lot of these teams? I mean, are you able to get scouts out there? I mean, do you have a good feel for the teams in your division?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, we're fortunate that we have lights. We play on Friday nights, and most of the teams we play Saturdays. So we get out there. We get a chance to scout everyone. And our coaching staff is very busy. We're all over the place all day Saturday. So we usually have our games on Friday nights as long as they're home. And then every single week we have a home game. We are all over the state scouting teams.
How do you feel about this new alignment? What's your opinion?
I don't really get caught up in all that stuff. I really am. I mean, for years I heard about us petitioning up and what a mistake that was. I really am a true believer in just play your schedule, and the rest will work itself out.
You know what's funny about that is in the preseason I was talking to Linwood Patnode at Monadnock, and he said, well, we're one of the smallest teams in this division, but hey, we'll play the teams. Well, they're the only undefeated team in Division 2, so it's funny how it works out sometimes.
Yep.
That's Coach Ryan Clark from Pelham Pythons. His team clinches the home field advantage in that conference championship game. Division III South, one of only 3 unbeaten teams in the state of New Hampshire, Concord in D1, Monadnock in D2. Of course, there's still games to be played next weekend before the playoffs start in 2 weeks. Coach, just wanted to ask you, that was the first play of the game, and you handed the ball to number 44, Nick Johnson, I believe, and he was down on the ground for a while. There was about a 20, 25-minute, maybe a half-hour delay, and I heard it was something with an arm, maybe a dislocation of the elbow. How is he, and how tough was that, on the first play of the game?
It was his elbow, and that's just so it's such an unfortunate thing to happen to such a great kid. Works his butt off. Was one of those kids, the first one in the weight room every single day in the off season, last one out. really would come in early before school to watch film, even in the off season. And he's he's a junior captain, so that tells you a lot about the type of person and player he is. And yes, it was his elbow. Luckily, he was actually able to meet up with us after the game for the celebration. So he did go to the hospital. They checked him out, and no idea how long he'd be out for. But yeah, he's a great kid. But the big thing was, and I talked to our guys after the game, is that when one guy goes down, someone else has to step up. It's that kind of team. Everybody knows that, and they did. We didn't really miss a beat, luckily, because Zach Masiello, who really he doesn't play JV and he doesn't get any carries at varsity, but he knew all the plays. He works hard in practice every day, knowing that something could happen and we might need him, and we did last night, and that was huge.
Coach, how about the atmosphere last night in Litchfield? I thought it was really, really cool. I mean,
that was incredible. Oh yeah, they even when I've gone to scout there, those fans they're great. They love their team. They get rowdy. I think bringing in those lights even got them more pumped up, and it was just a really, really fun night as far as they had their lights. It was their senior night. I think it was their homecoming.
Yeah.
And and we travel well as well. Obviously,
yeah, you guys
that
do.
Far away. So every away game for us is almost like a home game sometimes with how loud our fans can get, and so that was really cool. Especially a lot of people in both towns know each other, so that's turned into a pretty good rivalry, I guess. So yeah, you're right. That atmosphere though, that was cool. I mentioned that after the game as well.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed about your fans, like I said, I was on the Campbell side. You guys were loud. I mean, there was just a group that they were just very, very boisterous. So it was cool to see, and I'm glad that I got a chance to get out there and see some D3 football. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, Coach, and good luck in the playoffs.
Thank you very much.
All right, Ryan Clark, head coach of the Pelham Pythons. His team victorious big time last night, 48-13 at Campbell. It was a lot of fun. We'll take a timeout, come back. We'll wrap up the program. Don't forget the video cast of this show up on nhsportspage.com. John Kesty, he's in here filming it. We also got a special guest in here. We'll talk about that when we return. It is the New Hampshire High School Football Show on News Radio 610 and 96.7.
1, 2, 3, 4. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear you. Happy birthday to you.
Welcome back to the best local coverage of New Hampshire high school football on the New Hampshire High School Football Show on News Radio 610 and 96.7.
That is how we roll here on the New Hampshire High School Football Show. Happy birthday to young Allison, just 7 years old now, Dave Haley's beautiful daughter. Happy birthday, Allison. Little special treat for you.
Thank you.
Did Daddy buy you a car for your birthday?
No.
No, but I hear they are going to Toys R Us after this.
Toys R Us right after this.
And then, did I hear
That should be a 45-minute experience.
a visit with Chucky as well?
We may go Chuck E. Cheese Day, yeah.
I mean, it's right next door.
Lunch and
dude.
margaritas. We got all sorts of things going on.
Well, happy birthday to Allison. Yeah, she comes into the show from time to time, and she certainly brightens our day, so we wish her a happy birthday. That's good stuff. And good job by our producer, Shannon Loconte.
Yes, thanks,
for
Shannon.
digging that one up. Nice job. Very nice job. We're heading towards top of the hour at 9 o'clock, wrapping up the program. And, Dave, you were just kind of looking at that schedule. We just had Ryan Clark, head coach of the Pelham Pythons, on. His team clinched the spot, the top spot in that Division III South Conference. And next week, basically, the play-in game to determine who Pelham plays, Campbell playing Bow. Is that game at Bow or is that at Campbell?
It's at Bow.
Okay, so at Bow.
Now,
so
that'll
whoever
be for
wins
that spot,
game,
yeah.
they take on Pelham next week. I wanted to talk about
Great
some of the
division.
games coming up later on today, but I want to start with a game that took place a week ago today, Portsmouth at Plymouth. I went to the game. Another beautiful day for football in the land of Lenihan. Just the setting there. You sit up, if you've been there, there's a big hill on one side of the field across from the press box, and it's the side with the Plymouth sideline on. and you just sit up on that hill. It's a great view of everything, Zulius Field, and Plymouth dominated that game, especially in the first half. I think it was 15-0 at the half. Portsmouth was able to come back a little bit in the third quarter, but it was 22-7 with like 10 minutes left to go. Plymouth scored a touchdown. Jared Keel, John Thomas running all over the place. I think both of them 100 yards of rushing in the game, but Portsmouth staged a miraculous comeback, ended up taking the lead after a huge stop right about midfield. It was 3rd and short. Plymouth trying to run for the first down that would have killed the game.
Jared Cool to the outside,
Couldn't get it. They went for it on 4th and 1 like I think they should have, and they 99 out of 100 times get it. Portsmouth stopped them. First play, 50-yard touchdown. Portsmouth takes the lead.
Jake Becker. Yeah, and you and I talked on the phone the next day because I was interested to what your opinion. I would never, ever question Chuck Lenahan, who has forgotten more about football than I know. But interesting not to kick it. Portsmouth had no timeouts left.
Because they burned all their timeouts.
They burned all their timeouts, as they should. And so it was 4th and 2 at midfield. You kick the ball. Now, I understand it's high school. The kid could kick it 15 yards, and not make a humongous difference. But they decided to go for it. You agreed with the call. I don't disagree with the call. I just thought it was interesting. They went for it. Obviously, it didn't pay off. And then Plymouth gets the ball back with like a minute left. Colin Sullivan is a terrific football player.
But
he's
they
a
don't
good
have that
They're
passing
not
offense.
that offense. They're not. And one thing that you and I talked about, we talked on the phone quite a while the other day, is that teams like Plymouth, Exeter, Pinkerton, to name a few, I'm sure Monadnock may end up falling into this category. Teams that aren't used to throwing the ball all of a sudden are getting kind of exposed a little bit because they don't have that sort of balance that other teams do, and when they're down, they don't have any way to come down the field in a minute and make something happen. Portsmouth did. Portsmouth made one pass and they got there. So
and here's the other lesson for Plymouth is, and I had this conversation with Brian O'Reilly a couple of weeks ago after Concord hit a big 50-yard pass play over the defense to get Concord in position to tie that game and ultimately winning in overtime. Plymouth, all they had to do was play defense and make Portsmouth, take chunks down the field.
Right.
They hit it on one big play.
Yeah.
You don't want anybody getting behind you, and it happened in both of those games to two great programs, two great coaches, and both of them, I'm sure, were telling their teams, don't let anybody behind you, but it happens.
Yeah, and it changes the entire landscape
Ask
of that.
the Denver Broncos last year against the Ravens.
Yeah, exactly. It can happen at all levels. It changes the entire landscape of that division. The other thing, too, would be remiss not to mention is that Colin Sullivan almost hit Kyle Riesert with a touchdown on that possession. It got knocked away by a Portsmouth defender. I think it was Ogier knocked it away for Portsmouth. But if everyone I talked to said if Colin Sullivan gets that ball to Riesert, it's not knocked away. Riesert's going the entire way for a touchdown, and Plymouth wins. So it's one play here or there, but I just think that's such a fun division. I mean, and this is going to be fun the next few weeks.
Hey, before we go, because we got about a minute left here, I just want to make note of something that was in today's edition of the Union Leader, the City Sports column by John Habib, talking about the high school hoops preseason jamboree, how it's finally a reality, and we're very involved, nhsportspage.com, in putting this tournament together.
Yeah.
And look, I'm just glad that they're promoting this thing. It's going to be a big thing. It's coming up
be huge. We're
December
doing a ton
6th
of work.
and 7th, and there's 8 games? And
8 games over 2 nights.
And it's pitting teams that don't normally play each other, highlighted by Pembroke against Trinity. The final night, that's an 8 o'clock game on Saturday, December 7th.
Conant Central.
I mean, Bishop Brady against BG.
Portsmouth against Bedford. Lebanon against Spalding. Newport. The people at Newport taking on Alvern is going to be Merrimack Pelham, I think you mentioned. It's going to be tremendous. We're going to talk about that a lot.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So coming up December 6th and 7th.
We're going to sell that place out.
Preseason jamboree, and it's going to benefit New Horizons for New Hampshire Soup Kitchen, Food Pantry, and Shelter. It's all the time we have. I want to thank Ryan Clark from Pelham for coming on the show, John Kesty, our videographer, for the birthday girl, Allison. Happy 7th for Dave Haley. My name's Pete Terrier. We'll talk to you next week. Regular season finale.